Yeah, hi guys. We're going to present to you on senior geography. It's a subject many of you probably don't like so far, but we're hoping this might change your mind. Is that right, sir?
Yeah, I think so. Senior geography is an awesome course. I think people in year 9 and 10 may lose a little bit of interest, but then once they get into year 11 and 12, they realize how awesome it is.
Yeah, and probably you'll hear again, you get to get outside the classroom. It's one of the best subjects to actually understand different things around the world and properly try to address, look at, interpret, analyze different aspects in the world we live in.
And we also have lots of excursions and field work, so we literally get outside.
You have to. We can't say no. Okay, so firstly, we probably want you to understand what geography is about, and you probably get this understanding from year 9 and year 10. It's all about countries, it's all about food security, which it is, but it's more than that, okay? So we got to get back to the basics, and it's really about that interaction, that understanding how we are situated in a natural environment, how we formulate our built environment, and how all those impact on our lives. Okay, it's really how the world works, but beyond the content, it's a way of actually looking at things and thinking about it. So we call this geographical inquiry. Okay, how are we going to look at issues and problems? We're going to collect our data, we're going to properly look at things. Okay, we're going to evaluate our data, we're going to interpret, we're going to analyze, and then we're going to make suggestions. And then we're going to really communicate. And it's a real important skill you need to have moving into university or even the professional world.
Yeah, definitely. It builds those really critical skills, those really critical thinking and analytical skills. But we're also looking at really interesting stuff as well. So we're not just looking at sort of theoretical issues, we're looking at things that are actually happening right now in the world. So, we'd be looking at climate change, coronavirus, we'd be looking at how people move around the world, the issues with poverty, yeah, a lot of interesting issues.
And it's really multi-dimensional, okay? So we don't just look at poverty in and of itself. We try to look at poverty and how it affects different people. We look at how climate change affects the vulnerabilities of, say, you in Australia, how someone in maybe Djibouti or Kiribati gets impacted by climate change, how COVID impacts Australia less than, say, Brazil and the US, but we all know why for the US. So, yeah.
Yeah, so looking at, coronavirus is a great example, looking at what is it about the US that has meant that coronavirus has really hit it very, very hard. What is it about it geographically? So looking at culture, economics, politics, and then looking at maybe a country like Vietnam that has had very, very few coronavirus cases and very, very few coronavirus deaths, still nearly 100 million people. But what is it about Vietnam geographically that makes it less likely or it hasn't had the impacts from coronavirus that some other countries have had?
Okay, so you kind of understand a bit about it, but we're going to get into the course requirements. So it's about 2 units, like most of your other social science subjects. It's 120 hours each year. And one of the best parts is 24 hours of field work is mandatory. And what that means is 4 excursions.
Yeah, plus field work around the local areas.
Yeah, so going down to the creek or walking around town.
Doing water testing.
Yeah. Hopefully not falling into the creek.
Maybe doing some things with drones.
Yeah, drones. We've got some drones now. So
GIS work.
Yep, so playing with drones, data, it's fun.
Do you want me to go through the field trips or the trips that we've done in the past?
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the excursions that we've done, we go down to the beach and we look at the dune ecosystems down in Cronulla. That's one of the ones we've done. We also go kayaking on the Georges River. So looking, there's an example, getting out kayaking, getting on the water, having a paddle, having a look at the different ecosystems, the impacts down at Georges River of human activity. That was an awesome trip. We also have been down to the Southern Highlands to look at grape growing and winemaking and how those processes happen and the influences on the wine industry. We've been into the city, been down to Barangaroo, called The Ferry, had a look at the different changes in the urban environment throughout the city. It was a really cool trip. Yeah, so there's some great trips that we can do, and depending on numbers, really depends on how big we can make it and where we can go.
Yeah, and one of the best parts about geography is you can literally look at any place, any space, and actually analyze it. So I know when I was at uni, we did a field trip to Cabramatta. So you can look at anything in a geographical sense. Okay. Now the nitty gritty. Okay, so we have essentially 2 topics in year 11 and 3 topics in year 12. And on the left-hand side, you might see skills. And I know many of you may not like skills, but if you get them done really well now in year 10, okay, these are the same skills we carry over to year 11 and year 12. So gradients, cross-sections, vertical exaggeration, transects, analyzing sources. So graphs, tables, data, maps, look at densities, weather maps, topographical maps, AR, GR, area grid reference, elevation. I forgot to put latitude, longitude. They're all still in year 12, even though you learnt it in year 7. Okay, so that takes up about a quarter of the HSC exam. And if you got these on point now, it makes your life so much easier.
Yeah, you could probably already answer a couple of the HSC questions.
Yeah.
With some of the skills you already have. And this just gives you different ways of thinking about the world. So that's what the skills are for.
Now, in terms of year 11 and year 12, the actual content, so biophysical interactions, the living and the physical world.
That's great. I love that. I love that start with biophysical interactions. And a lot of students say they really enjoy that. So it's bringing a little bit of science, a little bit of sort of looking at how the physical world works, and sort of the nuts and bolts of the physical world and how those interactions actually provide systems that support our lives and that keep us living.
Yeah, now we got global challenges, and this is, I think it's more to do with food security to a certain extent. It could be to do with climate change. I think the course itself is very broad, isn't it, sir?
Yeah, very broad. So we can look at lots of things. I mean, even something like the pandemic right now would fit in there really well, because that is the global challenge at the moment. So lots of things to look at there.
Now we also have what we call the Senior Geography Project. Now this is it's a sort of mini project where you need to apply your geographical skills. Okay, so that involves collecting data, analyzing it, so primary data, doing some research, your secondary data, evaluating, analyzing and interpreting what you've collected, and really making solutions, because essentially you're problem solving in geography.
Yeah, and this is a cool project. So you get to choose the topic, you get to look at something that's going on in your local area or in the state. You can look a bit bigger than that if you want. And sort of, this is a little bit like uni. It's not as high stakes because it's not in year 12. So it's not going into your HSC mark, but it is still going through the process that you would go through for a lot of university level projects. And so you get to understand that process and ways of writing and thinking and researching and analyzing data.
And this is what we mean by thinking geographically and applying the geographical skills. So you can talk about anything really. It could be about gaming. It could be about, what's my guilty pleasure? Playing Pokemon Go. Okay, there's
eels.
Or the eels. You can do something about the characteristics of eel supporters and how they interact with their environment, whether we drive Commodores or not. Okay, for year 12, ecosystems at risk.
Again, awesome, really cool.
Yeah, we're looking at different ecosystems. This is where you go down to the river, you go down, do the kayaking and looking at different vulnerabilities. And what you'll realize is we got a bit of a mix between physical geography, so the hard sciences almost, and the human geography. So urban places is next, where we look at different changes to our urban environments. We got to look at different dynamics behind it, some different vulnerabilities of people at different places, and basically who benefits from everything.
Yeah. And then also looking at things like megacities. So, back in 100 years ago, all the big cities were in Europe. In the next 100 years, all the big cities are going to be in Africa and Asia. And why is that happening? How big are they going to get? We're going to have cities of 50 million plus potentially. What's that going to mean for people that live in those cities. Almost Australia's population doubled in one city. So what are they going to look like? What are some of the challenges, and maybe how can we make those cities better for people?
And lastly, we've got people economic activity. So this is where we go down to the vineyard and look at viticulture, how different places allow for economies to operate, how people exchange goods and services in a market environment, and we're looking at it through a geographical lens, essentially.
Yeah, this is a great excursion. We go down, we do some field work down in the Southern Highlands. We look at all the wine industry, how wine's produced. We look at grapes, what allows grapes to grow, why do they only grow in specific areas, what type of characteristics does that give to those grapes. Very cool topic to finish up with.
Okay, so you've been about field trip. Now, job opportunities, you can get into many, many things. And one of the key things is geography right now is one of those areas that is so important because there's so many challenges facing our world. Okay, so we're looking at how people can solve problems. And one of the key skills a lot of students lack is actually problem solving using clear method and data to justify their ideas. So think jobs like planning and development consultancy, these are all ones where you need to use your knowledge and apply it to real world problems. Sociology, tourism, pretty self-explanatory. International diplomacy and aid, we get suffering from many challenges in our global environment right now, and different people and their livelihoods. Policy making, cartography, making maps. I love maps. And GIS. Now, GIS is all about geographically illustrating on maps or different forms of data, information and data you've collected. So some of you might have done that with myself and Mr. McMurtry already, but it's a really important skill moving forward because you've seen all the coronavirus maps. That's all GIS. Okay, so that's all in using data and actually visualizing it on a geographical form.
Yeah, and so many businesses are crying out for people with really awesome GIS skills. I know that they're asking universities where are our geography and geography students that have these GIS skills, because so many businesses now are dealing with geographical issues. They're global businesses or large national businesses, and they're dealing with these huge challenges associated with drought, bushfires, floods, pandemics, these huge issues, and they're looking for people that have this ability to look at geographical information and make really good decisions.
And it's not just businesses. Like I use GIS in my own personal life to look at houses actually now, so I can check what the environment is like around me, the characteristics of the people around that area. So you can use it for your own purposes as well. Lastly, you can become an educator or a teacher. It could be an opportunity that you may be into. To be honest, there aren't that many geography teachers compared to other subjects. So it's a big job opportunity.
Yeah.
Now, last but not least, it's the skills you need. What makes a good geographer? Okay, and hopefully by the end of the course, you will have a broad knowledge base. Okay, it really needs you to understand what is actually going on in the world right now. We can't just follow our textbooks for everything. The theory is there, but we really need to understand how there's different vulnerabilities in the world due to the coronavirus pandemic. We need to understand climate change. We need to understand where and what's happening. Why is it being impacted worse in certain places?
Yeah, and what we can do to make it better. What options do we have, and what do we need to do to make the world better in the future?
Yep, and the last bit I'd say is one of the best parts, and I know you might be scared about this, is you need that interdisciplinary knowledge.
Yeah.
So we do have science in it. Okay, some of you like it, some of you don't. We have history. Okay, our histories inform our current geographies. There's going to be economics, there's going to be business, there's a bit of sociology in it as well.
Yeah.
So it's everything all brought into the one subject. So if you feel like you might not be strong in any of these in particular, but you might have a broad understanding, it might be that geography is for you.
Yeah, and it helps you out in all those subjects as well. Understanding what's going on in the world is so critical today. to understanding all those other subjects.
All right,
Cool.
Well, if you have any questions, feel free to ask us in social science, ask any of the teachers, and we hope to see you next year in senior geography.
See you next year.
Cheers.
How long did we go?